My guest today is the author of multiple books which look at the history of the nightlife, as well as the seedy underbelly of Vancouver and stories of how it's been policed over the decades. From the complete history of the Penthouse and the Commodore Ballroom to the last gang in town that shares the seldom told stories of the gangs that used to rule Vancouver's public parks. When you read a book by Aaron Chapman, you'll not only hear some fascinating tales, but you'll also be transported back in time to the years that they happened. His phone is full of numbers of people you wouldn't want to bump into in the street. Thanks for joining me.
Thank you for having me, Bob. It's wonderful to be here. Great to see you again. Yeah.
Nice to see you. Very nice to see you. Mm-hmm. Now, this book, The Last Gang in Town, I said it in the intro that gangs used to rule the parks. I don't think most people know about the park gangs.
It was something that was happening in the 60s and 70s in Vancouver, and if you're a Vancouverite probably of a certain vintage, you'll remember those years, but they're kind of long gone, and gangs and the nature of organized crime changed in the early 80s quite a bit, that we're sort of left what we have today, and the gangs of those eras are much different in terms of the criminal makeup they are today. But a lot of the people who are now the heads of some of the bigger gangs and criminal organizations in Vancouver got their start in those years.
You don't say.
Yeah.
So the gangs were kind of, I think you might say this in the book, disorganized crime?
It wasn't organized crime, it was disorganized crime. Yeah. That was the thing. And you know, it wasn't as though these organizations and these groups who never really had that much structure to them. These were street gangs. A lot of these guys were sort of street kids who sort of assembled around neighborhood parks because it was easier to sometimes hang out in the park with your buddies some nights when mom and dad were fighting, and then maybe be home, you know, and whatnot. So juvenile delinquents were made up a lot of these things. But again, things progressed and things got worse, and the police in the early 70s went to combat them in a way they've never done before or since, so heavily, and so in a secret way as well. And that's what that book gets into.
Yeah, what triggered that?
Interestingly enough, the Rolling Stones coming to town. The Rolling Stones concert, Exile on Main Street, the kickoff of the tour happened right here in Vancouver, which was a big deal back then. We didn't really necessarily have, you know, BC Place or anything like that. You know, a lot of these tours back then would start in New York or Los Angeles. It's a big deal Vancouver had that. At that show, there was a huge riot. If you went to the show, you'd walk out and you saw a lot of broken glass and police cars everywhere, and you might not have known what had happened. But there was a huge riot outside of people that not only wanted to get into the show, but some people who probably wanted to cause trouble and this and that. And the Vancouver Police Department blamed it on the Clark Park gang. Right around 14th and Main, or 14th and Commercial.
The park is still there,
The park is still there. You could still go there and whatnot. And it's interesting that the police blamed it on them. And what they did is they formed a secret gang task force called the H Squad to go after the gang. And again, some of the details had really never been published or talked about before, and I've tracked down some old gang squad members as well as old Clark Park gang members who sort of tell their story for the first time. And it makes one of the most, to me, one of the craziest and most fascinating stories that's ever happened in the city of Vancouver before.
Yeah, like I said, I didn't even know about the gangs before I read this book.
That's
and
it.
It seems almost like the Warriors, and the way you write it also is very engaging.
Thank you. Yeah.
I just love it. Do you ever feel unsafe when you're researching?
You know, I can recall a conversation. I got a phone call from a certain group of people that wanted to know what I was poking around about. And that was a little worrisome. I went to meet somebody who had just gotten out of prison for doing 25 years for murder, and I wasn't necessarily sure what I was walking into. So I called my brother and I said, "Listen, if you don't hear from me in 2 hours, this is the person I talked to, and this is where I was last at."
Wow, yeah.
And he was sort of surprised. And as soon as I got there, I realized this guy was quite a gentleman in an odd way.
Yeah.
Very friendly, very easy to talk to. In fact, I had such a good time talking to him. We talked for about 3 hours, and I realized what the time was, and I had to rush to step out and use the phone and call my brother and say, "Look, don't worry about it." I totally had forgotten. Everything's fine. But every once in a while, people, you know, there's every once in a while something that comes up. But people, I think, it's funny because when that book came out, I had a number of people, retired Vancouver Police Department people. Book came out around Christmas that year, and said, "Geez, Aaron, every ex-cop in the city got your book and they loved it. They thought you were very fair."
It was very relevant. It was revealing of
yeah,
these sort of
and I was a little bit
stuff.
surprised because we get into quite a controversial period in time with the Vancouver Police Department history. But he said it was great. I'm hearing from people I haven't talked to in years. It's great. About 2 days after that, on Boxing Day or so I got a little after that, I got a call from some of the gang members and they said, geez, every gang member and biker in this city got your book for Christmas, and they love it. So
Boxing Day, you spent your Boxing Day on the phone with gangsters.
Yeah, and whatnot. I get a Christmas card from some of them even today. It's quite remarkable. I enjoyed talking to the police and talking about the history, and they were quite honest and upfront with me. I had to change a couple names because some of these people now have nieces or nephews or grandsons in the police department. They don't necessarily want their career affected by that. But likewise with some of the gangsters who said, I've kind of moved on in life now, or things have changed, and or I don't want to necessarily upset anybody. Maybe you can change my name. But that only happened in a couple of cases and whatnot. But it's been interesting. That book has been now optioned, and they're trying to sort of market it to one of the the Netflixes or the Amazons of the world. So maybe we'll see one day we'll see a
I would love
movie
it.
or
I would
a TV
be an
series.
extra in that. Can you put in
let's
a
do
word
it
for me?
Let's do it. Can you be
Okay.
a heavy or a drug dealer or a cop or something like that?
Either or.
Okay,
I don't
we're
care.
working on it. I'll talk to the scriptwriter.
Can I wear maybe I'll be an undercover. I can wear a Mac jacket.
That's it. We all got to get our red Mac jackets out
Yes.
and be extras for that one.
Okay.
Yeah.
What are you working on now?
I'm working on. I'm just finishing a book about Doug and the Slugs, a legendary Vancouver band.
Criminals.
Not so much criminals. It probably more have to do with the Commodore book or the Penthouse book in terms of city entertainment or Vancouver After Dark,
Right.
And whatnot. There's a book project in England with a band called the Men That Couldn't Hang. That just had their 40th anniversary. I was over there, and we're working on something with them. And then there's a book on Vancouver restaurant history. That's probably a couple years away.
You got 3 books you're working on.
I'm working on three books right now. I have to keep.
What's next?
pots of stuff.
What one's coming out next?
The Doug and the Slugs book.
Doug
will
and the
be-
Slugs.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
cool. Thanks for joining me. Thanks for
My
your
pleasure.
time.
Yeah.
We're going to go to a commercial break, and then we're going to come back, and Nina's going to be talking to people on the street.